Tonight, world leaders condemn the death of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. Donald Trump ordered to pay a massive fine in a New York fraud case. Queensland's property prices at a record high and experts say they'll continue to climb. And Taylor Swift's history-making concert, 96,000 fans have their wildest dreams come true. Good evening, Lexy Hamilton-Smith with ABC News. Russian President Vladimir Putin's most outspoken critic, opposition leader Alexei Navalny, has died in prison. The 47-year-old's unexpected death has prompted global outrage, with world leaders, including Australia's Prime Minister, blaming President Putin for the death.
Seemingly well and joking with court officials. This is the last known video of Alexei Navalny alive. The jailed opposition leader was appearing in court via video link from a notorious prison in the Arctic Circle. He was serving a 30-year sentence for charges he and his supporters have labelled politically motivated. Hours later, he was dead.
He will probably be remembered as the best president of Russia that Russia will never have.
The prison released a statement saying he felt unwell after a walk and almost immediately lost consciousness and couldn't be revived. Global condemnation was swift and fierce.
Australia is shocked and saddened, and we hold Vladimir Putin and the Russian regime responsible.
Make no mistake, Putin is responsible for Navalny's death. Putin is responsible.
Alexei Navalny, очевидно, він убитий Путіним.
Obviously, he was killed by Putin, like thousands of others. Putin doesn't care who dies, as long as he retains his position.
From the Kremlin, a denial.
We are doing all the checks and clarifications. There is a certain set of rules that everyone is now following.
Alexei Navalny rose to global attention after exposing electoral fraud and government corruption during the 2011 parliamentary elections. In 2017, Navalny announced he was running for president against Vladimir Putin, but his candidacy was blocked. He continued to release dozens of investigations, exposing corruption at the highest levels of government. In late 2020, he fell critically ill after being poisoned by nerve agent Novichok at the end of a trip to Siberia. After recovering in Germany, he declared he'd return to Russia, despite warnings he'd be detained. He was, and since then he's been imprisoned on charges of extremism and fraud, sparking protests in the capital, Moscow. While coming as a shock to the world, Navalny knew his days were numbered.
My message for the situation when I'm killed is very simple: not give up.
As the news broke, foreign leaders were gathered for security talks in Munich. Navalny's wife, Yulia, was there and took to the stage.
I want Putin and his government to know that they will be held accountable for what they have done to our country, to my family and to my husband.
In Russian cities, supporters laid flowers for the Kremlin critic.
It's not good. Locked up, no freedom, no family, no wife. It shouldn't be like that.
But as night fell, police started arresting mourners. In London, supporters have turned out to the Russian embassy to pay their respects. Sadly, they've been here before. Alexei Navalny has been added to a long list of anti-Putin critics to pay the ultimate price for speaking out under his rule. His death leaves the country without a prominent opposition leader ahead of the presidential election next month, at a time when Vladimir Putin has amassed near unrivalled power. Catherine Diss, ABC News, London.
Former US President Donald Trump has been fined more than $500 million after a judge found he'd artificially inflated the value of his assets to receive financial advantage. It's a major blow for the man who's seeking to return to the highest office in the land.
My name's Donald Trump, and I'm the largest real estate developer in New York.
Donald Trump built his whole brand on apparent financial success and flashy displays of wealth. But today, a judge in New York ruled he'd been inflating the value of assets to gain financial advantage.
The scale and the scope of Donald Trump's fraud is staggering, and so too is his ego and his belief that the rules do not apply to him.
The punishment also staggering. Donald Trump to pay more than $500 million, and he's banned from carrying out business in New York for 3 years. His two sons, Eric Trump and Don Jr., banned for 2 years. But the judge also lashed them with his words, writing, "Their complete lack of contrition and remorse borders on pathological."
He needs to pay. You know, as a New Yorker, we always knew he was a fraud.
He got himself into this mess, and this deserved justice.
But in his Florida mansion, Mar-a-Lago, one of the assets he'd inflated the value of, Donald Trump wasn't backing down and says he will appeal.
You build a great company. There was no fraud. The banks all got their money, 100%. They love Trump. They testified that Trump is great customer, one of our best customers. They testified beautifully.
The incredibly stark and robust nature of the findings and the penalty are probably enough to trigger a real appeal at the state level.
Donald Trump's legal battles haven't derailed his political ambitions so far. He is clearly the leading candidate for the Republican nomination for president. But there is a live question about whether legal losses like today's will damage his standing with moderate and independent voters. But the more immediate concern for Donald Trump might be finding the cash in order to pay the fine. Carrington Clark, ABC News, New York.
At home, political tensions over Australia's border policy have reignited after a group of foreign nationals arrived in a remote Aboriginal community in northern WA. The ABC understands a third group has now turned up following the discovery of more than 20 men near Beagle Bay on Friday.
On the move once again, after claiming to have arrived by boat from Indonesia. This bus, believed to be carrying more than 20 men towards Derby, 200 kilometres north of Broome, after the group spent the night in Beagle Bay. But as their journey continues, so do political tensions over Australia's border policy.
I ran Operation Sovereign Borders. I know exactly how these people smugglers work. They will react to a weak Prime Minister and to a weak Minister. And if they see vulnerabilities, they will exploit them. And that's exactly what has happened here.
The opposition taking the opportunity in the wake of last year's release of more than 100 immigration detainees following a High Court ruling.
The people smugglers see all of that and they market it. They're very savvy.
We do not seek to politicise national security issues, and it is unfortunate when any politician seeks to do so.
Advocates urging the nation's leaders to avoid a scare campaign.
This is about people, not politics. It's not about left, it's not about right. And my message to politicians and the general public is to remember that. People will flee whatever way they can if their lives or their family lives are in danger.
On the ground, it's unclear whether the men will stay in Australia or be transported overseas. But there are signs they might be due to leave.
This Nauru Airlines plane arrived here in Broome on Saturday morning after stopping over at a Royal Australian Air Force base near Derby.
Australian Border Force has remained tight-lipped on any updates, despite reports another dozen men turned up late Friday. Roseanne Maloney, ABC News, Broome.
Australia's high demand for methamphetamine and cocaine is making us a tempting target for international crime syndicates. Traffickers bringing in illicit drugs often pass through remote areas of Papua New Guinea, where it is destroying lives and deeply worrying authorities. PNG correspondent Tim Swanston has tonight's special report from Daru Island near the Australian border.
This is the surprisingly narrow expanse between Australia and Papua New Guinea. Just 4 kilometres separates the two countries here in the Torres Strait. It's a remote part of the world, but it's recently come under increased scrutiny by police.
We are looking at the much bigger one. Those drugs.
They're patrolling the maritime border, searching for a group of suspected drug traffickers.
The POIs are known for people smuggling and also known for transporting illicit drug across to Australia using their networks.
Just a few months ago, in the PNG village of Mabaduan, police found 5 kilograms of methamphetamine, allegedly destined for Australia. 6 people were arrested. With Australia's soaring demand for illicit drugs and high street value for methamphetamine and cocaine, it's a tempting target for transnational crime syndicates. That makes PNG vulnerable and one of the final stops in what's known as the Pacific Drug Highway. While it's not exactly clear how these drugs get to PNG, it's suspected they're trafficked in from Southeast Asia or South America. From the capital of Port Moresby, they can be driven along the coastline to Kerema. From here, dinghies transport all types of illegal items from Gulf Province across to Daru, one of PNG's few Torres Strait islands. From Daru, Australia's mainland is a short trip away.
From here you can see just how porous the Australian PNG border really is. There's many villages on the southern end of Papua New Guinea here, and to get to the Australian side of the Torres Strait, to Saibai Island, it takes just minutes.
The presence of methamphetamine here is extremely concerning to local police and community leaders.
If there's a spillover effects on meth within Daru Island, we would certainly run to chaos.
In Daru, many here already work the black market. Harvesting sea cucumber is how many locals earn an income, but much of the trade is illegal.
They put me there at the border, Australian border, and I went for prison terms for 3 years. But I can't stop because there's no other means and ways for us.
It's this desperation to make a living that community elders fear turns people to the growing drug trade.
They are born fishermen, but these new things coming in, like drugs, they get involved because somebody bringing drug is coming with money.
Transnational Crimes Police, as well as customs officers, conduct patrols with Australian law enforcement, but it's a massive, expansive sea. Cracking down on the trade will require more economic opportunities for locals, meaning they're not vulnerable to being coaxed into working as traffickers.
The syndicates and those people who are actually involved in this thing has to look very carefully and see the effects that will have in the community.
Satellite images show Egypt is building a wall and levelling land on the border with the Gaza Strip. The construction of a buffer zone comes amid growing fears that an expected Israeli offensive could force 1 million displaced Palestinians to try and seek shelter in Egypt. The US has warned Israel against the offensive with concerns for the welfare of civilians, but Israel says it has no intention of pushing Palestinians across the border. Now, fleeing the war zone is proving to be increasingly difficult, but one family has just arrived in Sydney. They made the long trek without consular assistance and are only among a very small number of Australian visa holders who've arrived from Gaza since the war began.
Safe, at last, the Dawes family has managed to escape Gaza, but at great cost.
We lost our dad due to the lack of medical care. So the price is much, so I cannot describe it, I cannot say it in words.
Mariam's father, Mohammed Dawes, was a journalist. The vulnerable 63-year-old succumbed to a stroke in late November after enduring weeks of Israeli airstrikes and the destruction of their home.
My one wish during the war was to come back to my home for one day, just to take the things dear to me, just the things I love. The house was bombed and everything is gone.
Just 2 days after Mohammed's death, they were granted Australian visas. But getting out was anything but simple, while hundreds of other Australian visa holders remain trapped in Gaza.
It's not complicated, it's impossible. You know, I have friends there, I have relatives, they cannot go out.
To escape from Gaza requires a valid visa to another country and for your name to be on the Rafah border crossing list. Since the beginning of the war, more than 2,500 names have appeared on these lists for the United States. There's almost 1,400 for Turkey and 260 for Australia. More than 2,000 Palestinian citizens have been issued Australian visas since the start of the war, but the number of arrivals is far less.
A spokesperson for the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade said that the Australian government has so far supported 207 Australian passport and visa holders to leave Gaza, but it's understood that almost 100 more have made it here on their own.
After consular assistance for non-immediate family members was stopped in December, some have resorted to paying fixers and scammers, something the Australian government seemed aware of in an email addressed to another family. We do not know the details of how they have managed to do so, but it is a decision for you to make, whether you wish to attempt to depart. For those who do make it to Australia, their only support system is the local community.
When we knew that they were coming, we started building 2 cabins in my front yards, and I had to do everything by hand because it was a labor of love.
A safe haven for this family, who still fear the worst for their loved ones trapped in Gaza. Nabil Al-Nashar, ABC News, Sydney.
An advisory board which reviews domestic violence deaths in Queensland has announced it will examine the murder of Gold Coast mother Kelly Wilkinson. The 27-year-old was doused in petrol and set alight in her Arundel backyard by her estranged husband in April 2021. Earlier this week, Brian Earl Johnston pleaded guilty to her murder. Several issues will be investigated by the board, including potential failings by police in the lead up to her death. Advocates say there are lessons to be learned.
The Fatality review can look at the circumstances and the context around that death and see how the system failed.
To the dismay of prospective home buyers, Queensland's property prices have surged to a record high, and experts say the values will continue to climb.
It's a muggy Wednesday afternoon in Brisbane, but that's not the reason these open home viewers are feeling the heat.
Prices are skyrocketing, and it's a race against the clock, really, to get into the market.
By the time we get to the first inspection, then an offer's already been made, so a bit frustrating.
Brisbane property prices rose more than 13% last year. Already in 2024, they're up a further 1%.
Brisbane is expected to be one of the stronger market performers in 2024 due to a combination of a slightly lower price point, but also ongoing strength in migration trends.
We're seeing anywhere between 3 to 5% between now and say the next 3 months, and then another 5% in the back end towards of the year.
The interest in properties for 2024 has started off much stronger than it finished last year.
That's thanks in part due to interstate migration to Queensland, which is almost double the decade average. And demand is far outstripping supply, with property stock 30% lower than usual.
Even prospective sellers are in a bit of a deadlock, because if they put their property on the market, the question is, where are they going to go?
Regional home values are expected to cool from their post-COVID boom.
We are still seeing that very strong, anywhere between 7 to 9% growth in regional areas.
For some, it's time to take advantage.
You can't change the rules of the game, so you have to sort of look after yourself, and my partner and I are just looking at getting an investment property as a result.
For first home buyers,
hang in there. Like, it is a rough market out there, unfortunately.
Alex Brewster, ABC News Brisbane.
Staff at a regional aged care facility are taking a creative approach to improving the lives of residents with dementia. They're harnessing art, music and games to help them form new brain pathways. The results, we've been told, are impressive.
Fun with gel blasters at this aged care home. It's playtime with a purpose.
You just play around like a lot of kids, which we are, I suppose.
Painting and dancing are some of the activities at this centre at Childers in Queensland's Wide Bay, designed to improve the quality of life for residents with dementia.
To make it as fun as possible, as lively as possible, without wearing everybody out, but vibrancy is what we're after.
70% of residents have high-level dementia. The disease attacks the left side of the brain. These activities stimulate the right side.
Their self-esteem improves, their confidence improves, but also their willingness to engage and be public. If they're ashamed or they're embarrassed about their limitations, they'll just withdraw further and further, and that's what we don't want.
In just 12 months, staff have seen residents improve their verbal communication and become more social and calm.
One particular resident here was a recluse in her room. She was a hermit. She wouldn't leave her room if she took 3 suitcases. If you went into her room, she would be aggressive. She now is actively part of this.
Dementia Australia agrees that creativity is key.
It keeps them socially active, socially engaged, keeps their mind active, and we know the more engaged and involved people living with dementia are, the better they are, and particularly when it connects with them emotionally.
The centre plans to formally document its results to help others make similar changes.
I think we'll very adequately be able to just demonstrate that it has worked and it's a model that can be put across other facilities.
Perhaps putting gel blasters on the schedule right around the country. Nikki Sorbello, ABC News, Childers.
To sport, and Australia has beaten South Africa by an innings and 284 runs in the women's test in Perth to claim the multi-format series. The Proteas were resolute at the crease for most of the day, but Australia's bowlers prevailed. Annabelle Sutherland was named player of the match after her brilliant double century and 5 wickets for the test.
After a dominant day 2 where Australia built a 499-run first innings lead off the back of Annabelle Sutherland's double century, the hosts went into the weekend looking to wrap up a big test win. But the Proteas had other ideas.
Enjoys the pull shot.
Delmy Tucker and Tasman Brits frustrating the bowlers despite uncomfortable conditions.
In the right areas.
They offered chances, but the host couldn't make them stick.
Oh, it's gone in the air. Tracking back, King, it's just out of reach.
As Tucker brought up a defiant half-century following a first innings golden duck.
She gets it around the corner, and that will be a 50 for Delmy Tucker on debut.
Australia toiled without reward until Elise Perry finally broke through, but even that was a close thing.
Thank you. If we just go frame by frame here.
Chloe Tryon took the fight to the Aussies as she raced towards a half-century.
It's a natural game.
But the scoring dried up as the bowlers cranked up the pressure. Elisa Healy twice narrowly missing a stumping. Tucker's resistance was eventually broken thanks to Ash Gardner, bringing to an end an excellent innings on 64. The floodgates threatened to open as Gardner struck again.
That's a great catch. Annabelle Sutherland, she can do no wrong.
The new ball saw the quicks return and Darcy Brown struck.
Played on.
Tryon refused to throw her wicket away, posting a hard-fought half-century, but she couldn't resist Sutherland.
Boulder!
And the star of the game wasn't done, finishing with 5 wickets for the match. Alana King took the final scalp as Australia won by an innings and 284 runs and claimed the multi-format series. Tom Wildy, ABC News.
The Indigenous All-Stars have had a successful showing in Townsville, winning both the men's and women's clashes over their Maori counterparts. The women prevailed 26-4 before Josh Adokar scored a double as the men won back-to-back trophies.
Two proud and passionate cultures reigniting their rugby league rivalry once again. And it was the visitors who scored first.
Joey Tobin for the line. Oh, the Canberra powerhouse.
But Josh Adokar helped the Indigenous All-Stars respond not once, but twice.
Adokar's got a first quarter double.
Soon, Hamiso Tabuai Fido extended his side's lead, giving a nod to his totem in trademark fashion.
He's done it, the hammer. He squeezes through and scores.
Both sides traded blows in the second half, but the Indigenous team had done enough to prevail in Latrell Mitchell's first match as captain.
I didn't say too much. There's a lot of great leaders in our team, but I just think my presence was enough, and the boys just played footy and had fun. That was my clearest message: just play simple and back your abilities.
Earlier, Gillaroos centre Jamie Chapman set the women's All-Star clash alight with 2 long-range tries.
And Jamie Chapman runs away to score her second All-Star
as the Indigenous side secured their biggest win over their Maori opponents, 26 points to 4. Jessica Stewart, ABC News.
Taylor Swift has played in front of the biggest crowd of her career after 96,000 people filled the MCG to watch her record-breaking Eras tour. Over more than 3.5 hours, the pop superstar wowed fans with songs spanning her entire career and even included some surprises.
It's been a long 6 years for Australian Swifties. But last night, it was the world's biggest star who was left speechless on the first night of her Australian tour.
If I seem a little bit like I am losing my mind over the fact that there are 96,000 people here tonight, this is the biggest show that we have done on this tour or any tour I have ever done.
A look back at her glittering 18-year career and 10 studio albums, Taylor Swift's Eras tour stunned Melbourne's Friday night audience. With chart-topping fan favourites, dazzling performances and non-stop spectacle, leaving fans buzzing.
It was amazing. It was the best thing ever.
There was fireworks. Yes. It was just confetti everywhere.
It was the best night.
It was the best night.
I love Taylor.
So good. 11 out of 10. Taylor Swift is so sparkly and amazing. Oh my God.
Turn right.
There were nods to her Australian audience. A cover reveal to her forthcoming 11th album, and also songs never performed live before. The show even inspired several proposals.
I really miss coming to Australia, I gotta say. You guys are just, it's on another level.
Despite almost 100,000 fans inside the MCG, there were thousands more ticketless fans known as Taylorgaters outside, desperate to take part.
You know about me, but I bet you want to.
Being inside with tickets would have been better.
It's a good atmosphere out here though.
Place.
Yeah. Taylor Swift is my life. Yeah, totally.
She's the best.
While last night was Taylor Swift's biggest show yet on the biggest tour in music history, tonight she gets to do it all over again. And with 6 more Australian shows to go, it looks like Swift fever is here to stay. Leanne Wong, ABC News, Melbourne.
And time to check the weather now. And tropical cyclone Lincoln crossed the NT coast late yesterday as a Category 1, bringing with it intense rain and damaging winds. It was short-lived though and is now decaying rapidly and moving west. Heavy rainfall into Queensland has also sparked major flood watches for the Cape and the Gulf. Humidity dropped down to 65% today, Brisbane reaching 30 degrees and Ipswich a top of 31. Statewide, Ballarat in the southwest was the hottest town at 38 degrees, Birdsville 37 with temperatures along the seaboard in the low 30s. To photos now, and Robin caught this magnificent reflection at Harry's Hut in the upper reaches of the Noosa River before going for a paddle. Jeff captured today's sunny and cloudy day forecast for Broadbeach, and this lovely view of the CBD was snapped by Lindsay. Now he felt it summed up his mood for a happy Saturday. Thank you. Take a look at the rain from ex-tropical cyclone Lincoln now, and a low. It brought huge falls to the region, and the Bureau says it may intensify later in the week as it heads off the Kimberley coast. On the satellite, the northern tropics are still expected to get falls of up to 200 millimetres into tomorrow. Expect moist on-shear winds as well. The Bureau says the risky areas for flooding rains are from north of Ingham right up to Cape Flattery. 76 mils fell on the Kasserine coast in just 1 hour earlier today, and highs keeping everywhere else dry. Around the nation for Sunday, Perth a sweltering 43, much cooler in Sydney 29, Melbourne down to 24 and stormy in Canberra. In the north, cloudy, and those moist onshore winds will bring more rain. A bit drier out west though, Birdsville to hit 40, a sunny day for Roma, 33, partly cloudy elsewhere. Possible showers for the Darling Downs, Warwick a top of 30, now the rain will persist right along the coast. For Brisbane, mostly dry with light winds, Redcliffe 30, Gold Coast will cop a shower or two. On the bay, south-east easterly winds 15 to 20 knots, now seas around a metre, 50% chance of rain. And looking ahead, the sun will peak out a little bit tomorrow in Brisbane, but rainy for the rest of the week, and the same for Ipswich. And that is ABC News to the moment. Thanks for the company. Stay up to date on our website. But for now, from all the team, have a fantastic night.